Okay, here's a question for you. Why is it, this is from Advertising Age magazine in 2013, the top 100 advertisers by expenditure, and then they listed the most trusted names, the most trusted brands, and how this was the direct consequence of the amounts of money that they spent on advertising. The Coors, J.P. Morgan Chase, Allstate, the car insurance, Allstate, cell phone, Samsung, coffee, Dunkin' Donuts, computer, Apple, cosmetics, Maybelline, credit card, Discover, Blu-ray player, Samsung, gasoline, Shell, flat screen TV, Samsung, insurance company, Aetna, laundry detergent, Tide. You know, they go through this whole long list. Why? Because they spent a whole pile of money. Well, now, this is what Franklin Roosevelt said back in 1936 about people spending a whole lot of money on politics.
We had to struggle with the old enemies of peace, business and financial monopoly, speculation, reckless banking, class antagonism, sectionalism, war profiteering. They had begun to consider the government of the United States as a mere appendage to their own affairs. And we know now that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob.
This, of course, because the election of 1920 brought Republicans into control of our government, and basically the robber barons took over the country and crashed the economy. Now David Koch has announced, Charles and David Koch have announced that they are going to, they and their little network of about 300 billionaire donors are going to, millionaire and billionaire donors are going to spend close to $900 million in the upcoming campaign. I wrote a piece that you can find over in Common Dreams back in 2009 when the Supreme Court decided to hear this case, Citizens United, titled Fascism Coming to a Court Near You, Corporate Personhood in the Roberts Court. I refer you to. Horace Cooper is an attorney and senior fellow with the National Center for Public Policy Research. Nationalcenter.org is the website. Horace, is this not the definition of fascism, corporation, the merger of corporate and governmental interests?
Actually, no, that's not the definition of fascism, but I am interested in the nature of this dialogue and this conversation because I want to make sure that we are having a conversation that's about the principle, not about who's.
Here's what the American Heritage Dictionary says. Fascism, a system of government that exercises a dictatorship of the extreme right, typically through the merging of state and business leadership together with belligerent nationalism.
Yeah, it also means that definition also includes the idea that we suspend elections, that we don't allow for a federalist system, so that we have different levels of authority dispersed. It also means that we don't have the checks and balances of an executive and a legislative and a court system.
No, none of that stuff is in that definition. It's the merge. Yeah, Mussolini, he said fascism can more appropriately be called corporatism because, Mussolini dissolved the Italian parliament and replaced...
That's my point. That's exactly my point. Right. This is not fascism.
All right. So if we are, okay, your point taken, Horace. If this is not fascism, what is it? When the Koch brothers begin to buy off our country, is it just Hooverism?
It's not Hooverism either. But I said, is this a question of whose ox is getting gored? During the 2014 cycle, there was a lot of complaining about dollars being influencing this process, and then there was almost utter silence when the final results came in, and it turned out that progressives outspent, almost to a factor of 2, the conservatives in terms of outside big dollar contributions.
No, you're mixing apples and oranges, Horace, and you know that you're doing this. The amount of spending in these elections has been A, not that different on both sides, and B, we don't know how much outside money was spent altogether in all of these elections at this point, because so much of this stuff is being run through, as the Kochs are doing. They're running it through a nonprofit corporation. So you and I are supporting it with our tax dollars. And in fact, they're running it through multiple nonprofit corporations.
All right, let's back up. Politico did its analysis of the $300+ million of outside money that was done in the 2014 elections. Now, how much discussion have you and your audience had about the fact that progressives did so? in 2008 when the President of the United States abruptly announced that he would not accept public financing and set a record in fundraising, and in fact,
Horace, is what you're saying is because both sides do it, therefore it's good?
I am not. I am saying you guys actually don't care about this issue. You use it as a way to alienate independents and neutrals.
No, that's not at all true. I very much care about this issue. I think the government by organized money is as bad as government by organized mob. I don't care if it's union money or if it's Koch brothers money, whether it's Tom Steyer's money or George Soros'.
Why haven't you highlighted? Why isn't there a segment called "We're Policing
I opened
the
the show, Horace, by talking about how advertising drowns out voices and builds brands and money. And this is what this money is being used for. You and I both know it's all ending up in radio and TV, or the vast majority of it, which is why this conversation, by and large, does not happen on the airwaves, at least of music shows on radio and all across television.
I repeat, how come you're not having a program and calling the left together to clean its own house to set the example?
In other words, why shouldn't Democrats just totally surrender?
Oh, so now you agree that your house is just as corrupt as what you want to come.
So now you're back to your argument that if the left does it, that if Democrats do it, then it's okay if Republicans do it, even if Republicans, outdo the Democrats on an order of magnitude.
Well, I learned at the University of Texas that there were studies done in the 60s and 70s about advertising, and it turned out that a better product was the key to market share, not talking about the better product. And so I have...
tell that to some of the operating system people who are competing with Bill Gates.
I have consistently rejected the thesis that how well I advertise a product is going to be the test to whether or not more people buy it, but instead, how good the product is will help make a advertising campaign about a product very effective.
Horace, again, another disingenuous argument. How good the product is only known to the consumer by virtue of the advertising.
That's not true. Absolutely,
well, after a product's been on the market for a while,
absolutely, that is not true. People talk to other people is the primary way that information exchange happens in this country. But back to the political
And they get that information from the advertising on television. There's a reason why right now, Horace, neither of us can turn on any television in this city and not see an ad for the Keystone Pipeline. Why? Because they're advertising to members of Congress.
And that's fine. That's absolutely good.
I think that's terrible.
The political point and application of this discussion is if you have an argument that is effective, it is one that will be accepted by the public and, in fact, won't need the efforts of the telecommunications.
If that's the case, then why are the Koch brothers raising $900 million?
Because they have what they perceive to be effective arguments.
No, because they have to obscure their arguments.
Then you tell me, why did Mr. Steyer want to spend so much then?
Because so much was not $900 million, Horace.
No, the Kochs haven't yet either. But in 2014, Mr. Steyer led the list.
And the Kochs spent over $400 million.
They did not, and there's no study that shows that. But
I've got it right here in Politico magazine.
Even if they did, what you haven't explained to me is why Mr.
Excuse me, it was the
Steyer
RNC who spent $400 million. I stand corrected. Let's see.
What you haven't explained to me
they spent.
Mr. Steyer did that.
The Kochs spent $290 million in the run-up to the 2014 midterm elections, according to Freedom Partners Chamber of Commerce. This is the Kochs thing. Anyway, Horace, thanks for dropping by.
All right, thank you.
Horace Cooper, nationalcenter.org is the website. We'll be right back.